Hi guys, so this evening we're going to be talking about job interviews and how you can nail your next interview, and what you shouldn't say and what you should say. So we have Rebecca Brown here with us, who is a recruitment consultant on our science and engineering team, and she's going to be giving us some advice today.
Thanks, Melanie. Yeah, I predominantly recruit in the pharmaceutical and medical device industry, but this evening we want to give a good overview, depending on whatever industry you're in, whether you're a graduate or you have a couple of years experience, or even maybe you've been in your job the last 5-10 years and you're finding it difficult to make that leap. Interviews are somewhat like going on a date. You have to be presentable, well prepared. You want to give enough information but not give too much, and then also you want to make sure that you build a rapport with them on the day, so everyone can hopefully benefit from this evening.
Yeah. So I suppose the first question a lot of people get asked is, talk me through your CV. What would you advise for answering that question?
I mean, this question I think is probably the most important, because they are looking at you, they're going to look at, how you're presented, how well you're prepared, and that's the biggest thing. You should prepare for this particular question. They have the CV in front of them, so they don't want you to read from your education all the way up. They want you to talk about projects that you've been involved with, any kind of key achievements, anything that you feel would be beneficial for this particular job. So a mistake that people tend to make is, they go down through all the experience, but they're not really highlighting for this particular role. So make sure that you have this question really well prepared. And another thing, it's one of those questions that you can be almost too prepared with. So make sure you don't come across too rehearsed, and just make it be very natural in the interview, like it's very conversational.
Perfect. So really you want to just highlight your projects and your achievements and get your main points across.
Exactly.
Cool. So, and then your next question is quite often, what are your strengths, and then also what are your weaknesses? So what would you advise for that?
One thing I always say is, if you're unsure, go onto Google, research, top strengths for marketing industries, science industries. It's always going to be there online. But what I would say is, be honest with yourself. What do you consider your strength to be? Have them down. Maybe look at about 3 to 4. It totally depends on the industry that you're working in. But for example, in pharmaceuticals, like an engineer, maybe they're detail orientated, they're results driven, or they have a strong attention to detail. So anyone can say those type of strengths, but you have to be able to give at least 2 examples to back it up. So again, talking about the projects, working in a team environment or working on your own, to back up why they are your strengths. I mean, if you're working in a sales environment, your strengths could be, you're resilient, or you're determined, or maybe you are, results driven as well. So you just really need to know for your industry what your strengths would be, and then giving really good examples of it is the most important, I'd say.
And then what about weaknesses? I suppose a lot of people struggle with that question.
Yeah, weaknesses, people always think that maybe it's something that you're not good at, or that you're falling down on, but it's not, and no one's trying to catch you out. They just want you to say that you're working on it. So for example, maybe public speaking, or even if it's mentoring, as long as you're not going for a job that requires a manager, you can say that this is something that you're working on and you're willing to learn on. So that's the most important. So if it is, let's say, public speaking, you can say that this is a weakness of mine. However, I'm currently shadowing my senior manager. I'm looking to do a part-time course. Anything like that would be perfect.
So that you're aware of it and trying to kind of make it a bit better or improve.
Yeah, that you're trying to improve on it. That's the most important. And that's all I want to see in an interview scenario.
Great. So if you have any other questions, we're going to go through a few more, but if you have any at the end, just let us know in the comments and we'll address them then as well. So next, I guess, is why you're switching jobs, or why you want to move to this company.
Yeah.
What would you tell your clients for that question?
I think the most important one, be honest with the panel. They're going to probe beyond this question anyway. So for example, if you are, if you're in a job the last 4 or 5 years and you feel like, it's getting quite repetitive, you're not learning anything anymore, just be honest. Say to them that, the role for the first 2 years was really exciting and you were learning loads, but in the last 2 years it's gotten quite repetitive and you're not being challenged. the interview panel want to know genuinely why you are moving on, and just be as honest as you can, because they will probe you on this question. So just be honest and tell them exactly why you are leaving. And then they'll probably ask you in the interview, you know,
why do you want to work here?
Yeah, exactly. Why do you want to work here? You know, definitely look online on their website and, you know, on news, but genuinely go onto people, you know, the employees' LinkedIn profiles, you know, have a little look on their Facebook pages, you know, understand the culture that they have and why you would like to be involved with that. I mean, everyone can look at the website and see that, you know, maybe they've, you know, 60 offices, or, you know, that they've a certain head count, but that's not why you're moving jobs. You know, you're moving jobs for the culture and, you know, the growth or whatever it may be, but just be honest with them and, you know, be prepared for that question, because, you know, it might be the deciding factor between you and another person in the interview, you know, about why they want to work there.
Sure. And then I suppose you're saying be prepared for all these questions, and people often prepare for the technical questions. Yeah. But what about the HR kind of questions as well? Do you have any examples of them and why you should prepare for them too?
Yeah, I always find, especially in the pharmaceutical and medical device side of things, people very much focus on, you know, their technical ability and how they're going to give the examples, because they think, you know, if you're technically, you know, solid, that you'll get the job. But HR questions are just as important. I've had I think 2 or 3 examples where a HR manager said, you know, have you any examples of, you know, strategies, or, you know, if you were in a difficult situation, what would you do? And the candidate was, you know, at quite a senior level, and he said JGI, and the panel were all from the US, and they're like, what does that mean? And he was like, just Google it. So for them, they felt, you know, that maybe he was trying to come across as being a bit funny, but, you know, you don't want to get your humor across too much, that when it comes to some of the HR questions, that it comes across maybe a bit, you know, cocky, or, you know,
you're not taking it too seriously.
Yeah, and that's a huge point. Another guy in an interview, technically brilliant, and the very end of the interview, everything was going really well, and HR said, you know, what would you do in a stressful situation? Can you give me an example? And he was just trying to be funny, and he didn't realise, but he was like, oh, I'd bang my head off the wall, and he started laughing. And at the time, the HR manager wanted something serious and wanted, you know, a genuine answer, so she felt that he wasn't being serious. Yeah, and he wasn't the right fit, whereas technically he was very, very strong, and as a person, you know, I met him and he was a great guy, but that 1 or 2 questions, they can be the reason you don't get the job. So you want to build a rapport with them, but you don't want to come across as too funny or not serious about the job interview too.
Yeah. And is there any other things people should really avoid, especially, I suppose, in first round interviews?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like, an interview process can be kind of first round, second round, could be over the phone. But what I would say in a first round, whether it's over the phone or whether you are in a face-to-face interview, you know, try to avoid questions like, you know, the probation period, or will it get extended, or how many months is it? I did have somebody ask that question, and, you know, these are questions to avoid in the first round. I mean, you can absolutely ask, but just in the first round, be cautious. Another one, maybe about, you know, your holiday days, or, you know, maternity leave or sick leave. You know, people have asked these questions in the first round and they don't go down too well. So I would suggest, you know, avoiding them in the first round. And another one about salary. So, you know, salary expectations may come up in an interview, and we'll discuss that in a little bit, but try to avoid bringing it up yourself. You know, especially if it's not a time or a place, you know, and they want to understand you as a person and culturally, and you don't want to throw them off by saying, you know, what's my salary, or, you know, how much will I get paid, and benefits is another one. I would try to avoid that in the first round.
So really just sticking to your core skills and the company and what your experience more.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. And then, as you were saying there, people will ask you about salary and your salary expectations. What would you advise in saying? Because it's kind of a tricky one. Yeah,
it is. I mean, you don't want to give away too much, so never tell them exactly what you're looking for. So never give an exact figure. You can absolutely give a range. So you can say, look, the minimum is this and the maximum is this. in an ideal world, we'll all have, you know, a maximum, and you know,
Yeah,
you
of course.
don't want to, you know, you don't want to jeopardize your chance of getting the job based on you throwing out a figure. So what I always say to candidates is, you know, that you're relatively negotiable on the salary, depending on the role that you go into and the responsibilities. But you can always say it is the role and the company that you're really interested in, so you're relatively negotiable. And I find that candidates that say that, it goes down a lot better than even kind of giving a specific. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, a salary is really important, and your expectations, you want to make sure you get that across, so you're not wasting your time or the interview panel's time, but you don't want to jeopardize your chance of getting a second round by just throwing out a figure as well.
Yeah, I suppose with recruiters as well, quite often they kind of deal with the salary questions anyway.
Yeah, I mean, going through a recruiter is definitely easier because, you know, you tell them what you're looking for, and they're being as honest as you are, so you can throw out the figure, whereas they can discuss, you know, maybe what the maximum salary range is, and you know, they negotiate that for you. But if you're going directly, so you're not using a recruiter, I would definitely, you know, give a range, but you know, even just say that you're relatively negotiable. And I know that can be tough, because if it's the end of the interview process and, you know, maybe a company don't offer you what you're looking for, it can be very frustrating. But I would leave it to maybe second or third round before you talk about an exact figure.
Great. And then I suppose people want to know if you have any questions at the end of an interview as well.
Yeah.
People kind of, I know myself, I find that kind of hard in interviews. But what kind of questions would you advise?
Yeah, I think, you know, when it comes to the end of the interview, you kind of switch off and you think, you know, I'm done now, that was fine, you know, and you kind of panic over, and then they say, have you any questions? And like 9 times out of 10 people might be like, no, actually, you know, we've covered an awful lot. Even if you feel like you have covered it, always ask at least 1 or 2 questions. So what I would avoid is, again, some of the stuff at the beginning, you know, the probation period and, you know, the benefits and stuff like that. But, you know, maybe ask about what the first 3 months might look like in the job, or the team dynamic, you know, the structure. What I find is, you know, they're looking at your CV and they may have highlighted already 1 or 2 areas that you don't have experience with. So you could flag, you know, from looking at my CV, do you think there's, you know, anything that I could, you know, brush up on, or is there anything that you feel that, you know, I might have to work on? And in that scenario, they're, you know, they might flag one particular area, and it means that you know that it's an area that you need to work on, and they may suggest, you know, that in the first couple of weeks they've actually got a training. Yeah, so you're identifying maybe what a weakness of yours is in an interview, and it's a chance for you both to discuss that.
Okay, so kind of showing some initiative rather than being afraid of mentioning a weakness. Or
yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, you know, if they're interviewing 2 or 3 people, the beginning of the interview and the end of the interview is really where they're going to make their judgment. So you don't want to finish up the interview and not ask any questions. So I would put down 2 or 3, and if it gets answered somewhere through the interview, that's no problem, but have that 3rd or 4th question to hand just in case that happens.
Great. And I suppose important to remember that they've asked to meet you, they're interested in you as well. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. So unless anyone has any questions, which I don't think we have in the comments at the moment, that's all from us. If you think of any questions or have any questions later, let us know in the comments, or you can contact us either at info@cpl.ie. Thank you.
Perfect. Or you can reach out to me directly as well.
Exactly.
As I said, I recruit in the pharmaceutical side, so you can give me a call on my direct line, which you'll find on my LinkedIn. So, or email rebecca.brown@cpl.ie, and we've our interview handbook.
We do.
Yeah.
So you can check that out as well. So we have a complete interview handbook which has all these tips and loads more tips as well. So that's at interview handbook if you Google it, or we'll put it in the comments as well.
So we have a question actually from Udea.
Okay.
Thanks, Udea. It's a great question. She's asking, tell us about yourself. So how would you answer that question? I know we've done some research before that says that is one of the questions that people often slip up on.
Yeah.
How much detail should you go into there?
Yeah, like tell me about yourself or talk me through your CV. both of these
Kind of
will come
similar,
up. Yeah,
in a
I
way.
mean, they'll ask one or the other. They're not going to ask both. But you know, talk me through your CV will be more based around, you know, as we said, kind of your projects and your experience. But if they're saying, you know, talk to me a little bit about yourself, you know, you can bring a little bit more into
your personality.
your
and hobbies
personality.
and stuff like
Yeah,
that, I suppose.
but again, you know, you don't want to go off topic. Remember that if it's an interview scenario, they're there to see technically can you do the job, and you know your personality and the culture fit. Will you fit into the organisation? So I would give some of that information, but remember that, you know, they want to make sure that you can do the job. So focus still on your achievements and why you think you might be good for the job. They're the two biggest things I find. If the question is solely focused on, you know, talk to me about yourself, or, you know, talk me through your CV, both of those would be quite similar.
Brilliant.
Hopefully that answered your question.
Okay. So I don't think we have any other questions. So as I said, if you do think of anything, you can contact Rebecca directly or find the interview handbook in the comments.
Perfect.